Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. It's the 15th of the month, December. That would makes the math easy. It's 10 days till Christmas. And the question I would pose at this distance is, what about a white Christmas for everyone? Well, I don't know. There are some possibilities, but maybe not in the areas that a lot of people would like. Let's take a look first at how the pattern is changing. Hi, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Thanks for joining us. So the first thing we'll look at is the model mean. So this is the EPS, the European Models Weekly. So this was run back on Thursday, actually, and it applies beginning today and going through Sunday. So what you're looking at is the 500 millibar, and it's the mean for that entire 7-day period. So it gives you a kind of a good idea of what the general trend is. And so the 500 millibar flow is where the winds are at about 18,000 feet, and they flow between these lines like this. All right, and where you see the orange colors, yellow colors, that's where the heights, or in other words, these lines are bending upwards a little abnormally when compared to seasonal norms for this time of year. So this implies that heights are higher, meaning that we probably this time of year would expect to see lower heights here, either neutral flow or maybe even a little bit more of a trough of low pressure, but that's not the case around the Four Corners region at all. Now, where the heights are a little bit below normal is the Pacific Northwest. That's leading to another rain and snow event for those folks on the heels of the last one. And up in Canada, it's a little bit different. So how does this correlate to temperature? Pretty well, actually. This is a ridge right here. And where you see ridges, you see abnormally warm temperatures usually. And where you see troughs like this, you see cool temperatures. So let's see, same period. Now we're going to look at temperatures. And sure enough, it's a firecracker here for this entire weekly period. We're looking at readings of 20 degrees above normal or even more through Wyoming and parts of Colorado and surrounding states. A little bit cool in Canada and pretty neutral out on the East Coast. Not a whole lot going on. So one of the things we're wondering about is a white Christmas. So I can say for the week leading up to the Sunday before Christmas, what's kind of funny, so it looks like the snowfall rates are actually a little bit above normal because of the, again, increased moisture flow. The so-called atmospheric river is reestablishing itself in the northwest, so at the higher elevations, that's going to lead to more pronounced snow. But look at the central U.S. There's actually a little bit below normal snowfall expected throughout this entire area. So mountainous areas in the northwest, and we'll talk more about this here when we talk about the snow in detail, we'll be getting a lot, at least through, the Sunday right before Christmas, and not much happening. In fact, it'll be nearly impossible. Temperatures will be too warm, and actually, there's no storm either. So you got two strikes against you for getting the precursor to a white Christmas. Of course, we're not actually talking about, white Christmas can technically happen Christmas Eve until you wake up Christmas morning, right? So that kind of detail is not known at this distance, but I can give you general trends and tell you that for about the next 7 days, it's pretty much a no-go for that. Let's take a look at the surface maps. Monday afternoon, we have clouds drifting over a snowbank. That's still very obvious. It's everything that doesn't move on this loop right here. So that includes all these cloudy areas, all this white area right here, I should say. Some mid-level clouds moving through the central plains. And again, evidence that the moisture train is reestablishing itself across the northwest. If we look at the 500 millibar flow, that certainly is the case. Broadly, there is a ridge of high pressure here, but there's a little tiny short wave in the desert southwest. You can almost see the curl in the clouds there. And there are little disturbances going down through the flow here. And the long wave trough is established here. And this right here is a sure sign that Arctic air is being invited to come on down. And it is, and has. In fact, if you look at the map here, this is actually based on model data for 3 p.m. Central, but it's pretty accurate. This big old Arctic high is sunning itself over the southeast. Temperatures, model temperatures were only at 36 at Charlotte, 43 in Atlanta. Very, very chilly. Meanwhile, return flow has finally begun across the plains, and that's going to lead to a general warm-up that you will see here outlined later on when we talk about temperature that is going to, again, put the kibosh on snow, at least for the next 7 days beginning today. But let's take a look at where it is snowing and how much is expected. This is a look at snowfall over the last 24 hours. So if you see it's color-coded. So you're looking at about 5 to 8 inches where you see the yellow dots in through here. That red dot, you can throw that away. I think that's anomalous data. This was under a winter storm warning, this area of northern West Virginia and areas just south and southeast of Pittsburgh, and that was needed because we had about 12 to 8 inches of snow, 18 inches of snow rather, in that area. And you see evidence of the lake effect snow bands, like that little area of snow north of Syracuse. And in fact, if you look at the radar on this Monday afternoon, you can always tell everything that orients itself along the lake like this has the longest possible fetch of snow, and it's kind of like a finger of snow, and that's why one county can get like feet of snow, and these areas here and here are going, what's snow? A little bit of flurry activity, and that's it. And that's reflected in the snow forecast through Wednesday at noon. Still looking at 10 plus inch totals in that very narrow area as persistent winds come off of Lake Ontario here and into that area, and a little bit on Lake Erie too. Buffalo getting in on the act there as well. So the definition is if they think it's going to be really bad, they'll issue a lake effect snow warning. So if that little finger of snow is expected to get really bad, maybe shift around a little bit, still be pretty intense, that they'll issue that type of warning. Otherwise, if the snow totals are less, or it's connected with a part of another low pressure area, for instance, they'll either go with a winter weather advisory, which is the lesser snow option, or a winter storm warning in the Northeast. Either way, it's lake effect snow in this case, purely just a matter of degree. So here we'll look at snow totals in the Pacific Northwest through Wednesday, and again, in some of the higher elevations, we're looking at quite a bit. So we transition from the purple to the orange kind of color. That's 2 feet of snow, getting up to about 3 feet of snow. And I see some areas there that may be getting up to 5 feet of snow in the mountains very easily. And you can tell it's mountain snow just by the blotchiness and how it aligns along mountain ranges like that. Not surprisingly, there is a winter storm warning in effect for areas around Mount Baker and in the Cascades there. And the Mount Rainier National Park is under a winter weather advisory, as is the Olympic National Forest in the mountains just north of there. And if you're curious, snowfall for this today is at 31% of the country, and we're still looking at the heaviest snow totals from many storms, I think 4 in total, that helped to lay down this snow in Iowa. But it is, of course, diminishing on its end. So what about a white Christmas as far as the actual forecast is concerned? Well, this is the 3 to 7 day forecast. So it literally means this is day 1. So day 3 would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So this goes through the end of the week, through the 22nd. And yes, as we've already discussed, heavy snow in pockets of higher elevations, along with some high winds because the jet stream is going to be flowing fast over the mountains, and it always means downslope winds and very, very heavy winds, strong winds in those areas, very typical of winter. And of course, the heavy rain, as I kind of showed you already. I'll show you the forecast details of how much rain is expected on this, and when we talk about that here in a second. And then the snow hazards. Now, this is where you might want to hang your hat if you're looking for a white Christmas out west, because it does broadly include, at least a slight risk does, a little bit more than just the higher elevations. And what's interesting is the mountains of California, Sierra Nevada, are under a high risk of very, very heavy snow, and moderate risks exist for almost all the mountain areas in the west and northwest through that period. So right here, this does kind of incorporate changes in the jet stream flow, whereas now we have a ridge that kind of goes like that. By the time we get to this time period, it does shift a little bit. Remember, it's coming in to the northwest, but it's also kind of troughing down in the southwestern U.S. too, and that's what's leading to that slight risk. And that does take us through Christmas. So the rest of the country might be out of luck on that unless something drastically changes, or we get a short wave to come out of here and maybe dump some snow in the northern plains. Now, what about what's on the ground? A lot of that's probably going to disappear unless you're under the heaviest snowpack. After this week's temperatures, you'll see that in a minute. In central Iowa, might still have some snow on the ground. And also, some people define a white Christmas as fresh snow. Of course, that's a specific forecast for a specific day or night, and that's not known to any meteorologist, really. Let's talk a little bit about the heavy rain in the northwest. Now, this is total precipitation, so this does take into consideration mountain snows melted down to the rain equivalent, or water equivalent, I guess you could say. But so in the lower elevations, you still have quite a bit of rain falling here. So this red area is 2. The yellow areas that aren't up at higher elevations are 4 inches of rain, maybe 5 inches of rain. Again, not all these areas are above the elevation that require snow. So I'll show you where they have the flood watch in effect. You can kind of tell the areas that are under the gun. Now, remember, flood watch can also include any snow that happens to, let's say, melt and come down into the warmer areas. So that's a thing as well. Let's take a look at those temperature trends. Here's the forecast for Tuesday. This Arctic air is wearing off quickly, even though it is below normal in these areas of green and blue out in the east. Look at what's happening here, roughly from the Great Lakes and mid-Texas all the way to the coast, except for the valleys of California. They're looking at high temperatures in the 60s, close to 70 degrees, through Denver and parts of western Nebraska and Kansas. Even up here in the north, highs in the 40s, low 40s is actually pretty spectacular for this time of year. That's Tuesday, tomorrow, if you're watching this on when it's released on Monday. Thursday, skip 2 days ahead. A little bit of Arctic intrusion in the northern plains there, but generally speaking, the country is mild to warm. Vegas will be at 71 on Thursday. Chicago will warm to 46. And places in the south, for instance, San Antonio, 80 degrees, Houston, 78. So pretty warm. And if you think that's warm, go 2 more days ahead to Saturday, and you see 81 degrees in Lubbock and 64 in the town I live in, which is Springfield. But going up to the north, again, a little bit of Arctic air is kind of leaking in to the northern plains, but generally the whole country is experiencing a very mild to warm pattern. And so not surprisingly, the extended forecast, this is the 6 to 10 day forecast, Sunday through Thursday. Again, if you're going to talk about fresh snow cover, if it's a possibility at all, it'll be with either clipper systems that move through here or lake effect snows, and even those won't last much through, let's say, Wednesday. And if we just extend this 2 more days, so we go 8 to 14 days, it's even higher confidence that it'll be above normal in Texas. So pretty much anywhere in this shade of red here, I think it's a no-go for a white Christmas. Maybe out here toward the end of that period, possibly, and maybe in New England, which is, where the lodge was in the movie and the excitement over the song and all that. But generally speaking, this is a warm weather pattern going into Christmas that I don't think is going to break down significantly enough to bring, snow to anywhere but a high elevation area, and certainly not in some of the more populated areas, let's say, of the central U.S. or the eastern U.S. Of course, I'll keep watching it and bring you another update later this week. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.